Well, welcome to our Facebook Live, the Antilles Episcopal Conference Facebook Live conversation. And today we're having a conversation with one of our youngest, perhaps newest bishop of the Antilles Episcopal Conference, certainly not youngest in terms of age, but one of the youngest in terms of ordination. We have with us Bishop John Persaud, the Bishop of the Diocese of Mandeville, Jamaica. And this afternoon, we're having a conversation around the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine. But before we go into that conversation, Bishop, can you just share with our listeners your own experience on being what I call a COVID-19 bishop? You were ordained in the midst of the COVID pandemic and the lockdown, and you're starting a new ministry within the whole COVID experience, and how that has impacted your ministry and your community. Share with our listeners.
Well, good afternoon, Father Don, and I'm happy to join you in this conversation. Interesting you said that I was the baby bishop of the conference. I'm no longer that. Yeah. As of last Friday, I hand over that title to our new bishop, Bishop Neil Scantlebury of Bridgetown, Barbados. Yes, it is true. I was the bishop of our conference that was ordained smack in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it was some experience. I suppose, everyone looks forward to an occasion like that in so many different ways, different persons, be it the person who is being ordained, in this case, myself, family members, friends, the diocese itself, because the Diocese of Mandeville had been waiting for over 4.5 years for a new bishop. And so there was a lot of excitement and then comes the time when this is supposed to unfold in the diocese and celebrated, and not even one person from any of the communities was allowed to be present physically. Wow. That for me was the greatest hurt, actually, and something I had to live through in the experience of becoming a bishop in a diocese where the very people that I am called to serve and to shepherd could not be at the ordination physically. A few of my family members, not all, I come from a big family, but a few of them braved it and came into Jamaica for the occasion, especially since both of our parents had died, and they felt they wanted to rally around me on that occasion. And they did that. They came with the understanding that they would attend. I had gotten clearance from the authorities that this would happen. And then when they arrived, the day they arrived in Jamaica, that all changed. And so they were there. There were about 17 persons in all, be it family and a few close friends, who came in and could not attend. They just could not physically attend. So, and I know that hurt them. By that time, I had come to a place of peace myself. I had had a chance, having arrived in Jamaica, to have my retreat done and so on. There was a peace that came over me that was really wonderful, that I was able to embrace that moment, even though with all its challenges. But it was an experience. Hats off to the local team that put it together. And with all the challenges, that they never stopped, they really gave their all and brought off an event in the middle, as the authorities in Mandeville itself said, it was the first public occasion that they allowed to happen in the pandemic time. But they were very careful about it. So yeah, it was an experience, Don. But it's all God's doing. It's not about us.
And I suppose it's that peace. You talk about that peace that put that disposition of peace that you came to during the turbulence of the planning and the celebration. I suppose that's the piece that you would have carried with you as you carry out your ministry in the diocese, still on the lockdown. Share with us the first several months of ministering in a diocese that is on the lockdown.
Yeah. Look, in one sense, for me, like as I assumed the responsibility for the diocese on that day, the 19th of September, I took possession of the diocese, which was the day of the ordination. I'm especially because of what happened, that the people could not be present physically at the ordination. Mm-hmm. I was going to do it anyway, but there was an urgency about it for me that I would go around to every community, not just the parish, every community. So even satellite communities, I said to the priest, I don't want you to bring people together in the main church, for example. I want to visit every community. And so I started that journey from that day after the ordination. Every Sunday, I went out into a different community. At this time, we were still being allowed to have churches open, but with of course, with the protocols in place, therefore social distancing and so on. And I started, I didn't give up. I presented myself to each community, asking for their prayers, introducing myself personally to them, letting them know how hurt I felt that they could not be at the ordination, but that we will make up for it, that we will build relationship. Mm-hmm. And of course, this was on the heels of Fratelli Tutti of our Holy Father, and with its whole focus on a building of a new relationship. And so that was my theme, if you like. And so I was wanting to build relationship with the people in every community. And so that started and was going fairly well. And I got around the diocese eventually, but at some point, the authorities had to then give a further lockdown, which allowed us only to have 12 persons in the church. And basically it was to allow us to stream live our services. So when that happened, I judged that my showing up at a community meant, because my driver would also be there, the two of us would take two people away that would normally be present. So I didn't go then to the communities during that period. I held off, and until when it opened back again to 30 people, and now it's 50. So slowly, I mean, we're learning to live in these conditions. It's not as everybody knows, it's not ideal, but we are still trying to make the best. But I use that word learning because I think there are lots of lessons to be learned from this experience, and I hope that we can learn them.
Right, and so as you moved around the diocese physically and then virtually, I would think. And building relationships with the people within the diocese, and just to inform our listeners that the particular region or locale of your diocese is in the center of the island of Jamaica, and it's very rural and mountainous. Can you just share with us the geography of your diocese, so that we give our listeners a sense of what were you talking about?
Well, for a man who comes from the flatlands of the coastline of Guyana, you can imagine the transition into, I mean, not that Guyana has mountains, but we live on a flat coastland where it's literally flat. And even though I lived for years in Trinidad and elsewhere where there were mountains and hills and so on, the experience here for me has really been an experience. I mean, I'm really in the heart of the mountains, if you like, and a lot of the communities to travel to them. So one of the first ones when I came and I was doing that track around all the communities, one of the parishes, there are 3 communities there, and I went off this day. Of course, I had no idea where I was going. The driver is taking me, and we went out, and that day, the weather turned on us and it became extremely rainy. I mean, the rain was just pelting down. We got to the church that I was expected at. Nobody showed up. But one soul came out. A gentleman eventually arrived just simply to tell me that there's nothing going to happen here today. So, I should go home. So I then dropped him home and then continued on my way home. And what an experience it was. The roadways turned into rivers almost, it looked like at certain points. It was frightening. Actually frightening.
Wow.
I mean, luckily for me, I had an experienced driver who took me home safely. But there were times we were crossing portions of the road. Well, we weren't even sure where we were. It was like a river. And it was really an experience. And a lot of people who knew I had gone out there were scared for me, and they started calling to find out, Right. So I learned a lesson that day. But yes, it has been, I mean, the diocese here, Mandeville, as you said, Don, is in the heart of Jamaica. It's very rural. Our communities are small communities, which for me is a really beautiful experience, because very often our church communities are so big that we become impersonal. In this experience here, church is family, and it really lends itself to a lot that can happen. So I'm excited about that, but we're still being checked by COVID-19 and the pandemic.
And yes, and as you talk about being checked by the COVID-19 pandemic, share with our listeners what's happening with regard to the vaccination rollout in Jamaica in general, and in particular in your own diocese. What's the rate of the vaccination rollout? How are people receiving the vaccination? Is there a high hesitance, vaccination hesitancy? Share with our listeners what's the state of in the diocese.
Yeah, the government here got, and as far as I am aware of, there was only one kind of vaccine was here in Jamaica, the AstraZeneca, and that was on offer. Unlike many of the other territories in the Caribbean, we seem to have only gotten that one. I'm hearing now in the news that through the US government, the Johnson & Johnson will be made available. But for now, it's just been the AstraZeneca. And of course, you know that at one point there was some suspicion and whatever else surrounding this vaccine when it was stopped in certain places and so on. But at the beginning, I think there was some hesitancy about it, and how just before the government rolled out its program of vaccination. And they went the way, of course, like many other places, of vaccine the frontline people, the healthcare workers and doctors, nurses, and so on, and all those connected with the healthcare system, the police, the army even, because they wanted, in case of a strict lockdown, the army would be involved. So they had to be. So all of that went and fairly smoothly. I think there were hiccups along the way when some of even those persons were hesitant. But it started to pick up, and then they started to open up with the different age groups, the older moving down. Again, I think like every other place, while there have been many who have been moving, and I was very surprised when I went for my first dose. It was a lot of people showed up, even though there were appointments made, and a lot of the elderly, because it was an age thing at that stage. But even when, I mean, it's hard to sometimes gauge it, while you're still seeing many people who are taking the advantage of being vaccinated, there is still a lot of hesitancy, I think.
Right.
And that, I think, is connected to be honest with you, some fake news that gets out there too.
Certainly.
That it mixed up with everything else, and so a lot of suspicion surrounding it, and and with that, even some genuine concerns by some people.
Certainly.
So but it continues to roll out. I just had my second dose last Tuesday, and again that seems to be continuing apace. But I still feel that generally, I would say there is still a fairly high percentage of hesitancy among the population.
Yeah. In an interview with a Roman newspaper several months ago, Pope Francis said this statement, with regard to taking the vaccine. He says, "I think that ethically speaking, everyone should get vaccinated. It's an ethical choice because you're playing with your own health, your own life, but you're also playing with the lives of others." Just share with our listeners your own response to that.
Well, the Holy Father's words are always full of such wisdom. I don't know I can better it, but I'll say this. I certainly agree with that. I think from all that we are hearing through the scientists and the experts in the field, it is, I think, the most important decision for us to make at this time. I think the Pope is correct in saying ethically that you are not playing with the gift of your life, which God has given to you, when you make the choice for a vaccine to stem this pandemic. But for me, Don, it is also the other aspect that the Holy Father points to, I think is extremely important. It is the unselfish thing to do. It is the way that we Christians, particularly so, are guided in our life, to live the unselfish way. And this is not only about me, but it's about also protecting and helping others to have life. And so I think it's an unselfish thing that we are called to do. Even if I, in other words, have some doubts or whatever, or fears in my heart about it, I still feel I would want to make that decision to be vaccinated because it is the unselfish thing for me to do, to truly offer others the chance to be alive.
Many of your Caribbean bishops, your brother bishops, have been vaccinated, and they, in their own respective dioceses, have been promoting, the need for their members to be vaccinated. Just share with us, how can taking the vaccine positively impact on the wider Caribbean region and help the Caribbean to become healthy?
Well, I do feel that there is a responsibility in part on the part of leaders in every sphere, leaders in terms of their political leaders of our respective territories, as well as the religious leaders, as well as leaders within families and so on. I think it's important that we show the example. And so I know many of my brother bishops of the Antilles, for example, as you're showing on this interview in shots, have actually taken photographs of them being vaccinated and have promoted it in their respective countries and dioceses. I didn't remember about taking a photograph. So I didn't actually have one done on both occasions. It just slipped my mind. But I certainly am, and right now I'm considering here in the Diocese of Mandeville of putting out an appeal. Not only that is going to be addressed not only to our communities, but to the wider community as well, inviting people to truly, if they have not done so, to make that decision to be vaccinated. And to share my personal experience of having been vaccinated. So yes, I think it's important.
Well, certainly a healthy population means a healthy church. If you don't have a healthy population, you won't have a healthy church. So, we thank you for taking that leadership role in getting vaccinated and also promoting the vaccination. And we really pray that with everyone, or at least majority of the population of the Caribbean vaccinated by the end of the year, we'll certainly have a healthy population and a healthy church. Bishop John, we'd like to truly thank you for sharing with us and with our listeners your own experience as what I call a pandemic bishop, being ordained in the midst of a pandemic and ministering to the people of God as a true shepherd in the midst of a pandemic, and also encouraging your people to get vaccinated so that they can become healthy. Thanks for sharing your experience, and thanks for promoting the vaccination program. And we look forward to further conversation with you on your ministry as the Bishop of the Diocese of Mandeville, Jamaica. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father Don, for having me and for giving me the opportunity of sharing. And if my last word would be that this is going out on the airwaves, is to say to everyone across the region, please, if you have not yet done it, move towards getting yourself vaccinated. It's going to be one more vaccinated and therefore maybe one less being infected. Please, I do appeal to you. Let us keep each other alive and happy. God bless you all.
God bless you, Bishop John. Blessings.
Thank you.